with its own brain, its own voice, its own legs. There's only one problem. It needs your eyes. Virtual Boy. See it now in 3D.
Howdy Grubs! Nintendo is releasing Virtual Boy games as part of their Nintendo Switch Online game streaming service. None of us really grew up with the Virtual Boy, and it was so short-lived with so few games. I don't think any of us had a sense of nostalgia tied to it. So I'm playing and reviewing every one of the 22 officially released Virtual Boy games to see if anything is actually worth bringing back. You know the deal, I'm playing it so you don't have to. The first game is, of course, going to be one of the launch titles. The VB released on July 21st, 1995, so I was only 4 years old when it came out. Alongside it was Mario Tennis Galactic Pinball, Red Alarm, Tolero Boxer, and Panic Bomber. The Virtual Boy itself was released as a sort of midway awkward teen face sort of console, something to keep us gamers busy while we waited for the release of their next console, the Nintendo 64. Rather than just waiting and releasing the N64, they decided to throw out this thing while we wait. It wasn't even in a finished state upon its release. They were very seriously just wasting time with it. Mostly it was released in an unfinished state because they wanted the resources being used on it to be freed up for the N64. So now that you know that it only has 22 titles, 14 of which in the US, you're probably not surprised that it was a flop. It appears Nintendo never wanted it to succeed, but one of the creators, Gunpei Yokoi, said in an interview that it flopped because of the hardcore gamer's opinion. He said that we never took it seriously and that we thought it was too gimmicky and that's why it flopped, because people cared too much about what the hardcore gamer opinion was. It definitely had nothing to do with it being a poorly executed, half-finished idea using technology that nobody wanted. Let's talk about the console itself a bit before getting on with the first game. The Virtual Boy was a cartridge-based 32-bit system like the GBA, but it only displayed in red and black. Kind of like the Game Boy original, but inside the headset it was illuminated. This resulted in eye strain and headaches, and it was bad enough that Nintendo included warnings in multiple of their games if you were playing them for too long. Despite the eye strain being a known issue, Gunpei Yokoi said he consulted a doctor and they said that this might actually be good for people's eyesight in the long run. Mr. Yokoi is an amazing toy maker, but not every idea can be a good one. He had a lot of good ideas like the Game & Watch, Game Boy, and the Wonder Swan. I think we can excuse this one failure. Besides, it's not like I bought one of these. To me, even if the system got enough time, it was never going to succeed because of that color palette and the technology that they used. It was just too bad. But Mr. Yokoi insisted that color doesn't make the game, and that can be true. Unfortunately, most Virtual Boy games weren't good games, let alone good Virtual Boy games. The Virtual Boy has a lot of other interesting features like the way it simulates 3D, and that's highlighted in our first game, Mario Tennis. It was also pitched as a portable console, but it needed a table to stand on. Its controller is also very odd-shaped and has a lot going on. The system's power comes from the controller using a battery pack with 6 AA batteries and features a power switch. It has 2 D-pads, the shoulder buttons are just little dots, not full shoulder buttons, and the handles on the grips look like a rejected design for a double-ended couple's prostate massager. Let's talk about the game now. The first title is Mario Tennis, and it is absolutely 100% undeniably Mario Tennis. I'm playing these through emulation as recording it would be impossible with no video out. Even if I had a physical one, my camera would have to be parked in front of the headset and then I couldn't see with the camera in the way. Unfortunate, as the 3D won't really translate, and the 3D in these games weren't optional. There was no slider to turn it off like the 3DS, despite it working similarly. So to turn off the 3D, you'd have to shut one eye while playing. We're going to start with discussing the manual because playing without the understanding of the manual is kind of hard. I've never been great at Mario Tennis, but I've played once before reading the manual, and Luigi went 5 rounds without me scoring a single point. I'm bad, but I don't think I'm 0 points bad, so let's take a look. The manual starts with a bit of salesman fluff, which is kind of weird. We already have the game if we're seeing the manual, so what are they trying to sell us on? They got our money. It says stuff like how amazing Mario Tennis is, and there's nothing like it. Yeah, there's nothing like Mario Tennis. Then goes on about how the character moving freely through the 3-dimensional space and that the ball and everything moves in full 3D space too. If you move to the net and the opponent lobs, the ball seems to fly, actually, over your head. It sure does. But without the 3D, this is looking more like watching Saw 3D without the glasses. You're just sitting there wondering why so much crap is flying towards the screen. It continues to stroke itself with, "There has never been a game that was able to so realistically create the feeling of the depth on the court." Do you need a napkin? You keep stroking your ego like that and you're bound to finish soon. Personally, I don't think a sports game is actually the best launch title, but Nintendo felt very different. The next few pages is about setting up the V-Boy and the focus so that you can see everything on it. Then it talks about the auto pause function, They knew that this was so bad for your eyes, so they wanted to make you take a break every 10 minutes. But who was going to do that? They'd quit after 5. Now for the controls. Left D-pad moves us, bumper does nothing, select brings up screen adjustment in case the 3D is off, start to pause, A to hit the ball, toss it, select, and move on, B is a soft hit and to toss the ball. Oh, so I was playing correctly. That's unfortunate. I might have to get an assistant and see if it's just me playing badly. With the extended control info, it really does seem like I'm playing correctly. It's a very simple game, with most of the gameplay being contextual based, or whether A or B is pressed, and whether D-pad is being pressed with it and when. When the game starts, we see an opening animation, then we have a single choice of singles or doubles matches. Upon selecting singles, we get a choice of one player versus computer or tournament mode. You can't play this long enough to enjoy a full-length game, let alone a tournament. Next, we have a choice of difficulty, easy, normal, hard, then match length, 1 set, or 3. Again, way too long. And finally, our choice of character. The character selection looks simultaneously like mugshots or Sonic EXE style horror negative photo kind of thing. For doubles, we have essentially the same options. Doubles can only be played with computers. One of the biggest lacking features here is the lack of multiplayer. That, of course, wasn't really possible. Only one person could wear the headset, of course, but there was a link cable in the works, and had this system had the time to properly finish cooking, then maybe it would have launched with the cable available alongside a version of Mario Tennis with multiplayer, but we'll never know. The gameplay, though, is tennis. It's definitely tennis. One person serves, and you hit it back and forth across the court. You take turns serving, and it goes on for way too long. This was actually one of my gripes with the GBC version of Mario Tennis. While vastly superior because of the campaign and RPG mechanics, it's still way too long of a game for me. These are games on systems designed to be played in short bursts, but then take forever to actually play. Interestingly, this is the start of the Mario Tennis series, and I'm so glad that Nintendo didn't give up after this entry so that they could make another terrible one for the Wii U. The difficulty of the game can affect the ball speed, tighten the speed spot on a hit, change opponent's power, and even make your body obscure the ball. The manual also suggests that the characters have different performance, and they do. Mario being the all-rounder, like usual, Luigi is Mario, but faster, Peach is slow but with bigger sweet spots on her racket, Yoshi is the fastest but with smaller sweet spots, Toad is similar but with lower racket strength but can lunge to hit shots, Koopa can also lunge but is slow and with a large sweet spot. Lastly, DK Jr. is the most powerful with all other stats being lowered. None of this is communicated in any visual way within the game on the character select, so you only know this from screwing around, noticing differences, and looking at the manual. There are some quirks to the controls though. Some kinds of shots can only be pulled off with directional inputs and good timing, like ground shots. If you press the D-pad too soon, you may find yourself walking a bit instead of taking your shot. This ends up with you potentially missing your shot entirely. These kinds of tricks don't really matter with a computer though. You can't surprise a computer. In general, there isn't much special or unique about the game besides the perspective. It has none of the RPG mechanics of the Game Boy series. It doesn't have the power-ups of the console series. It's literally Mario playing tennis with some character variation that isn't communicated to you. However, it does look pretty good for a Virtual Boy game, and the music is nice. It's a fine enough game, but I don't think it's a good game, let alone a good Virtual Boy game. It does use the 3D, but it actually makes it very difficult to play. Whenever you think you should swing, you should actually wait a little longer. It's really hard to judge the timing, and I don't think that would be improved by me having this strapped to my face as I dangle my legs helplessly a foot off from the table. I got wife Mole Blythe to play, and she said pretty similar. The timing is really hard to judge, you have to wait way longer than you normally would for the swing to be good. We even noticed that the game is very generous with late swings, giving you a successful hit when you should have missed in pretty much any other game. She thinks it'd be much better if it were played in 3D and if the ball had a shadow, but both of us don't think it's good enough to warrant buying physical or the new attachment for the Switch. Even if it functioned ideally, it's still just an okay game. When the system's only gimmick is its 3D, it needs to make good use of that 3D in a way that improves the gameplay in some fashion. Mr. Yokoi knew this, and yet he still put it out. This is an experience that would be better with a top-down view or isometric without 3D. Even if we ignore the red, this is an okay tennis game tops. But me and Blythe both agree that this is something that 100% needs to be played in 3D to appreciate it. As to whether the game becomes magically good after that, no, probably not. There are much better Mario Tennis games that cost less than a $100 Virtual Boy attachment. The best way to play this one is going to be on original hardware or with the attachment, but the game to me isn't worth that kind of spending. Thanks for watching. Remember to tip your mole. I take likes, subs, and ball emojis. I'll be back next time with Galactic Pinball. Honestly, I'm not huge on pinball either, so we'll see how that goes. Later.